Red Glass by Laura Rousseau, Chapter 16, Part 2. That night, I slept little, listening to Dika's distinctive snore and Abuelita's gentle breath and Nola's murmuring. Did I want to be an old lady like Nola, never having followed the moon? I closed my eyes and slipped into memories. Heard snatches of cumbia music, saw a full orange moon through the windshield, felt sparks in the van's darkness, things that touched the core of me, which was not rusted scrap metal after all, but something deep and mysterious as the ocean. A rooster crowed. I got up quietly and slung my backpack over my shoulder. I tiptoed into the room where Pablo and the cousins slept. I bent down and touched my lips to Pablo's cheek, right on the kiss-shaped birthmark. On the way out, I stood over Dika and Abuelita for a moment. A thin line of glistening drool leaked from the corner of Dika's mouth. I felt like hugging her. Beside her, Abuelita looked as though she was in the middle of a wild dream, her eyes darting underneath their lids. I might not see these odd women again. I let the gravity of this settle in. For the first time in my life, I was taking a real risk. And yes, I felt fear, but it wasn't the endless loop of worries I'd grown used to. My thoughts shone clear and sharp as cut crystal. This is the path I am taking. This is what I need to do. I wrote a short note and laid it between their heads. Then I whispered goodbye to Nola. Her eyes opened. I jumped. She looked like a ghost, her white hair loose from her braids, feathery wisps fanned out on the pillow. Kua nanda kuve, she said. I nodded. I know, I whispered. I'm going to find him. She reached up and took my hands, which were no longer manos tiernas. She pressed them to her cheek. She laughed. She moved her fingers over me, making little crosses, blessing me. She took off one of her necklaces, a square piece of leather imprinted with the Virgin of Huaquila, the same Virgin on Angel's pendant, the very miraculous one. Nola put it over my head, adjusted it on my chest, pressed it over my heart. Gracias, Nola, I said. I walked outside into the cool night air to the roadside. The scent of Queen of the Night was so strong it felt like a tangible presence. I shivered under my thin sweatshirt and waited for the truck. Supposedly it passed by every 4 hours starting around 5 a.m. I had my passport in my pocket and an extra $100, the emergency cash Juan had given me, tucked in my bra. A few sleepy-eyed people carrying bundles on their backs walked over to wait for the truck. They looked too groggy to ask what I was up to. Soon the pickup truck bounced up the road, and once it stopped, we climbed into the back. By the time we reached Huajuapan 2 hours later, it had grown light. The driver dropped me off in the bus station parking lot, a black stretch of oil-stained asphalt. Feliz viaje, he called after me. Happy travels. When I got to the front of the line, I smiled bravely, trying to look as if I traveled around Central America on my own all the time. The ticket seller was a middle-aged man wearing an intimidating starched shirt and a blazing blue tie. He seemed in a hurry. Yes, señorita. I'd like a ticket to Tapachula, the evening bus, please. He clicked on the keyboard with manicured nails and shook his head. Sorry, señorita, but it's full. My mouth dropped open. Full? He nodded. That overnight bus is very popular. After a moment of shock, I started forming Plan B. Go all the way back to Pablo's village, or buy a ticket for tomorrow night and stay in a cheap hotel. The man clicked a few more keys. You're in luck, señorita. There's a bus that leaves in 20 minutes. It's only second class, but there's plenty of space on that. I tried to think fast. People were waiting behind me, looking restless and rushed. What time does that bus get to the border? I asked. He glanced at the plastic map on the wall. Oh, I'd say about 6 o'clock tonight. But second-class buses make more stops, so you never know for sure. I chewed on my cuticle. So, before dark? I'd say so. He looked impatiently at the growing line of people. Would you like to pick your seat? He rotated the screen toward me, motioning to the available seats glowing green against the black background. The bus was mostly empty. I swallowed hard. Well, are you sure I'd get there before dark? Nothing is sure, señorita. But is it safe? He motioned to the TV where the news blared. Hey, listen to the news, señorita. You only hear the bad things. If you worried about everything you heard, you'd never leave the house, would you? My teeth tore at my thumb's cuticle. Well, I mean, look, señorita, we have many people waiting here. He smoothed his tie and looked at the next customer. Please, step aside. Okay, give me this seat, please. I pointed to a seat by a window. Once I paid him and got the ticket, I realized there was no time to walk down the street to buy snacks. I'd have to get food at one of the stops. I took out my bottle of water from my backpack and waited on a hard plastic seat, sipping self-consciously. The waiting area smelled like a mix of disinfectant, exhaust, and cheap cologne. On TV, a woman with bleach blonde hair gave the news. Floods and murders and hijackings. I unfolded my map and saw that Angel's Town was not even a half inch from the border town. Less than 30 miles as the crow flies. This reassured me. Even if the bus arrived a little late, I'd still have time to make it to Angel's Town before dark. Soon I became aware of people staring, whispering, wondering what the foreign girl was doing alone at the bus station. A guy about my age was staring especially hard. He had a chubby face, kind of friendly looking, kind of slimy. His hair was stiff and spiky, and its shadow on the wall looked like little saw teeth. I touched the virgin necklace that Nola had given me. My eyes flicked to the clock, the white tiled floor, the buses idling outside the window, and back to the clock. Where had they cut Angel? I pictured his face crisscrossed with gashes. I thought of Mr. Lorenzo's scars, the ones I had seen as a reflection in Dika's and Angel's eyes. The slimy, friendly guy moved next to me. Up close, I realized he was the source of the cheap cologne smell. Excuse me, señorita? Where are you going? Guatemala. Solita? I nodded. Yes, alone. You're brave. He waited for me to ask about him, and when I didn't say anything, he just kept talking. I am going there too. I study in the university here in Huachuapan, but I'll be visiting my aunt in Guatemala for a week. I forced a smile. It was a good idea to know someone on this trip. That way, criminals might think we were together and not mess with me. This guy seemed pretty harmless. He could watch my back. Once the bus arrived, he insisted on carrying my bag outside. Excuse the bother, señorita, he said, but would it be possible for me to sit beside you? Okay. He sat down. Do you have a boyfriend, señorita? I hesitated. He was looking right into my eyes as the cop had done. I wasn't used to being flattered, and it made me feel cautious. Yes, I said finally. Too bad, he said, but we can be friends. He winked. I'm Rodrigo. Sophie, I mumbled. Nice to meet you. Then he drilled me with questions. Where are you from? What are you doing here? How old are you? Until finally I said I was tired and closed my eyes and pretended to sleep. To my surprise, I actually drifted off, and it did feel like drifting, floating through the air as though gravity had been a figment of my imagination all along. Really, it was very easy to fly if you could only hold on to that lightness, the feeling you got as a kid, running with joyful abandon, like Pablo flying down the hill, his arms outstretched like wings.